December 1944. A message arrives at Third Army headquarters. It doesn't ask. It doesn't suggest. It orders. The largest Allied command structure in Europe, millions of men, thousands of officers, entire nations coordinating through layers of command, has issued a directive. It moves through channels the way these things always move: typed, verified, transmitted. One man reads it. He doesn't acknowledge it. He doesn't file it. He doesn't comply. Within hours, an entire army begins moving in the opposite direction. Not slowly, not cautiously, at full speed. Supply lines stretch. Fuel runs short. Men push through weather that grounds aircraft and turns roads into frozen channels. The system, built on coordination, on synchronization, on the assumption that orders flow downward and compliance flows upward, watches as a single commander treats a direct instruction like a suggestion he's already rejected. This isn't improvisation. It isn't panic. It's something else. The question isn't whether he heard the order. He did. The question isn't whether he understood it. He did. The question is what he saw that made him believe the order was wrong, because 55,000 men are about to pay for that belief. And the system that gave the order, the structure built to prevent exactly this kind of unilateral decision, is about to learn whether its rules exist to protect coordination, or whether coordination sometimes protects the wrong thing. The order was clear. The response was faster. What happens when one man decides the system is moving too slowly to matter? The command structure exists for a reason. By winter, the Allied advance has created a problem that success always creates: distance. Every mile gained stretches supply lines thinner. Every victory pushes armies further from their fuel depots, their ammunition stores, their replacement pools. The machine that broke through. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person who keeps history alive. So do me one favor, tap like, so this story isn't buried. Show support by subscribing, so you don't miss the next chapter, and share this video so more people discover the truth history tried to hide. Normandy and drove across France now operates at the end of logistics chains that can barely keep pace with the front line. Someone has to decide who gets fuel, who gets ammunition, who advances, and who waits. That someone sits at Supreme Headquarters coordinating armies that span hundreds of miles. British forces in the north, American forces in the center and south. Each commander sees an opportunity on his front. Each believes his sector holds the key to ending the war. Each wants priority for supplies that don't exist in sufficient quantity to support everyone simultaneously. So the system imposes order. Broad front strategy. Advance across the entire line. Keep pressure everywhere so the enemy can't concentrate reserves against any single thrust. Don't let one commander race ahead and expose his flanks. Don't create penetrations that can be isolated and destroyed. This isn't caution. It's math. Third Army sits on the eastern edge, pressed against German defenses that have stiffened as winter closes in. Progress has slowed from miles per day to miles per week. Supply trucks struggle through mud and ice. Air support stays grounded. The enemy fights for every town, every ridge, every advantage the terrain offers. The directive from Supreme Headquarters is unambiguous. Consolidate positions, rest and refit, prepare for a coordinated spring offensive. No major operations without approval. No unilateral commitments that could pull resources from other sectors. Third Army's commander receives this directive the way every subordinate commander receives it. He acknowledges receipt. Then something breaks in Belgium. December 16th. German forces attack through the Ardennes forest. Not a local counterattack. A full-scale offensive. Panzer divisions, infantry corps, artillery that tears through American positions held by units that weren't expecting this level of violence. The entire center of the Allied line buckles. Within hours, Supreme Headquarters redirects every available unit toward the bulge forming in the line. Orders go out: contain the penetration, establish defensive positions, hold until reinforcements arrive. Third Army, positioned south of the breakthrough, receives an order: go north, shift the entire Army 90 degrees, move into defensive positions to stop the German advance from spreading south. Defensive positions. The order doesn't say attack. It says contain. It says hold. It says wait for coordination with other forces moving to seal the breach. Third Army's commander reads the order. Then he starts planning something else entirely. Not a shift to defensive positions. An attack, not containment. Penetration, not coordination with the forces trying to establish a defensive perimeter. A drive directly into the southern flank of the German offensive while it's still moving west. He sees something the system doesn't see. The enemy has committed its reserves. Push them forward, expose them. For the first time in months, German armor is in the open, overextended, focused entirely on the breakthrough instead of the flanks. The system sees a crisis that requires containment. He sees an opportunity that requires speed. The system has ordered Third Army to move into blocking positions. He begins moving his entire force, 3 full divisions, then more, not into a defensive line, but into an attack posture aimed at a town called Bastogne. Supreme Headquarters doesn't know this yet. When they find out, the question won't be whether he heard the order. It will be whether the order mattered at all. Third Army isn't built for defense. For 5 months it's pushed east, attacked, broken through, advanced faster than supply lines could follow. Its divisions know one rhythm: forward. Its staff plans offensives, not withdrawals. Its entire operational tempo is built around momentum. The order to shift north and establish defensive positions arrives at a headquarters that has never stopped moving long enough to dig in. The commander calls his staff together, not to discuss how to comply, to discuss how fast they can attack. Within hours, staff officers are pulling maps, not maps of defensive sectors, maps of approach routes, roads that lead north into the southern edge of the German breakthrough, fuel calculations, ammunition loads, which divisions can move first, which can follow, how to turn an entire army 90 degrees while it's already in motion. This isn't improvisation. The planning is already done. 3 days earlier, before the German attack, before the breakthrough, before Supreme Headquarters issued any order, Third Army staff ran an exercise. A theoretical problem. If the enemy attacks through the Ardennes, how fast can Third Army reorient and counterattack? They worked out the logistics, the routes, the timing. Now the theoretical problem is real, and the order from Supreme Headquarters says contain, not attack. The commander doesn't wait for clarification, doesn't request permission to modify the directive, doesn't propose an alternative and wait for approval. He moves. December 19th, 3 days after the German breakthrough. Third Army begins shifting north, not into blocking positions, into attack formations. The 4th Armored Division leads. Behind it, the 26th Infantry Division, the 80th Infantry Division, more units falling in behind them. An entire corps wheeling north through weather that keeps reconnaissance aircraft grounded and turns roads into frozen channels that vehicles can barely navigate. Supreme Headquarters learns about the movement through reports that don't align with the order they issued. Third Army is moving faster than expected, too fast for a defensive redeployment. The formations are wrong. The approach routes are wrong. Questions go back down the chain of command. The responses coming back up are vague, evasive. By December 22nd, the truth is undeniable. Third Army isn't moving to contain the German breakthrough. It's attacking into it, The target is Bastogne, a town encircled by German forces. American units trapped inside, surrounded, cut off from supply and reinforcement. The enemy is tightening the noose. Within days, maybe hours, the garrison will be overrun. Third Army is driving straight toward it, not carefully, not with coordination, at full speed. Supply trucks struggle to keep pace. Fuel depots empty faster than they can be restocked. Divisions advancing on parallel routes compete for the same roads, the same bridges, the same supply priorities. The entire movement is balanced on the edge of logistical collapse, but it's fast, faster than the system planned for, faster than doctrine allows, faster than the enemy expects. German forces in the path of Third Army's advance weren't positioned to stop a counterattack. They were positioned to exploit a breakthrough. Their flanks are exposed. Their reserves are committed forward. Their supply lines stretch back through terrain they assumed was secure. Third Army hits them before they can adjust. December 26th. The 4th Armored Division reaches Bastogne, breaks through the encirclement, opens a corridor into the town. The relief is real. The trapped garrison holds. The German advance stalls. Supreme Headquarters doesn't celebrate. They're counting the cost. Third Army advanced 100 miles in 1 week, through winter weather, against enemy resistance, without the air support that doctrine requires, without the supply coordination that prevents units from outrunning their logistics. Divisions that moved fastest are now combat ineffective. Tanks sit empty of fuel. Ammunition stocks are depleted. Infantry units that push through frozen terrain without rest suffer from exposure, frostbite, exhaustion. The casualties aren't just from combat, they're from speed, and the commander who ordered the advance isn't apologizing. He's already planning the next phase. Because relieving Bastogne wasn't the objective. Destroying the German offensive was. And that requires more than a 100-mile sprint. It requires finishing what he started without permission. The corridor into Bastogne is 4 miles wide. Not a secure supply route. A narrow channel carved through enemy positions that still hold the high ground on both sides. German artillery can reach it. German armor can attack it. The units that broke through are exhausted, low on ammunition, spread thin across terrain they don't control. Holding the corridor requires constant reinforcement. Widening it requires more attacks. Sustaining the advance requires supply trucks running a gauntlet that the enemy can interdict at will. Third Army pushes anyway. Not just to hold Bastogne, to collapse the entire southern shoulder of the German breakthrough. The commander sees the enemy committed, extended, vulnerable. He sees a chance to turn a defensive crisis into an offensive victory. So he keeps attacking. January 1945. Third Army drives north and east, not in coordinated bounds with air support and overwhelming supply, in continuous assaults that devour men and material faster than the system can replace them. The 4th Armored Division, the unit that broke through to Bastogne, loses half its tank strength in 2 weeks. Not all to enemy fire. Some to mechanical failure. Some to fuel exhaustion. Some simply abandoned when crews can't keep them running in sub-zero temperatures. The 26th Infantry Division takes casualties that leave entire companies below half strength. Frostbite removes as many men from the line as combat wounds. Trench foot, exposure, fatigue that turns simple operations into lethal mistakes. The 80th Infantry Division pushes through towns the enemy has fortified and mined. Progress is measured in hundreds of yards. Every advance costs. Every position taken has to be held with fewer men than doctrine requires. By mid-January, Third Army has sustained 55,000 casualties, not in a single battle. Across 3 weeks of continuous offensive operations in winter weather against an enemy that's defending instead of retreating. Supreme Headquarters reviews the numbers. Third Army attacked without authorization, sustained an advance that outran its logistics, committed forces that were supposed to be resting and refitting, prioritized speed over coordination, momentum over consolidation. The cost is undeniable. 55,000 men killed, wounded, captured, or removed from combat effectiveness by non-battle injuries. Divisions that need weeks to reconstitute. Armor formations that need complete refitting. Supply stocks depleted to levels that threaten other operations across the entire front. And the result? The German breakthrough is stopped. The offensive collapses. Enemy forces withdraw. The crisis passes. But at what cost the system didn't authorize and wouldn't have accepted. The directive Third Army received said contain, establish defensive positions, coordinate with other forces, wait for a planned, resourced, supported counteroffensive. Third Army attacked immediately, committed everything, pushed until the enemy broke or the advance stalled from exhaustion. Supreme Headquarters could have stopped it, could have ordered Third Army to halt after Bastogne was relieved, could have reasserted control over a subordinate commander who treated direct orders as suggestions. They didn't, because the attack was working, not efficiently, not economically, not the way the system would have designed it. But it was working, and by the time the cost became clear, the outcome was already decided. The question isn't whether Third Army succeeded. It did. The question is whether 55,000 casualties were the price of success or the price of ignoring the order, because the order existed for a reason. It existed to prevent exactly this kind of uncoordinated, unsupported, high-casualty offensive, to prevent field commanders from committing forces without regard for the larger picture, to prevent speed from becoming more important than sustainability. Third Army's commander believed the system was moving too slowly, that coordination would take too long, that waiting for approval would waste the opportunity. He was right about the opportunity. The enemy was exposed. The breakthrough could be collapsed. Speed mattered. But the system believes something else, that opportunities exist across the entire front, that every commander sees an opening on his sector, that if everyone ignores orders and commits forces unilaterally, the entire structure collapses into a race for resources and glory that undermines the coordinated effort required to win. Third Army proved speed could break the German offensive, but it didn't prove the offensive couldn't have been broken another way, with lower casualties, with better coordination, with the air support and supply buildup that a planned operation would have included. The commander who ignored the order never doubted his decision. The system that gave the order never stopped questioning it. And the 55,000 men who paid the cost never got to weigh in on whether the speed was worth the price. The German offensive ends in failure, not because it was stopped at the perimeter, because it was destroyed from the flank while still pushing forward. Third Army's attack into the southern shoulder collapses the enemy's momentum before they can consolidate gains. The breakthrough becomes a salient. The salient becomes a trap. By late January, German forces are withdrawing, not in organized retreat, in fragments. Divisions that entered the Ardennes at full strength limp back across the border under strength, disorganized, incapable of offensive action. The crisis is over. Supreme Headquarters examines what happened. They ordered containment. They received an attack. They expected coordination. They got unilateral action. They planned for a methodical response. They witnessed an improvised sprint that nearly outran its own supply lines. And it worked. Not the way the system would have done it. Not with the casualty ratios a planned operation would have achieved. But faster than any coordinated response could have moved. The question the system has to answer isn't whether Third Army succeeded. It's whether success justified the method. Because the method violated every principle the command structure exists to enforce. Orders aren't suggestions. Subordinate commanders don't rewrite their missions based on personal judgment. Armies don't commit to major offensives without clearance from higher authority. The chain of command doesn't function if every link decides independently when to comply and when to improvise. Third Army's commander saw an opportunity the system was too slow to authorize. But the system wasn't slow because it was incompetent. It was slow because it was coordinating multiple armies across hundreds of miles of front. Because it was allocating limited resources among competing priorities. Because it was trying to prevent the kind of disaster that happens when one commander drains the fuel and ammunition stockpiles that other sectors need to hold their positions. The system could see what Third Army's commander couldn't see, that British forces in the north needed supplies for their own operations, that American forces in the center were barely holding against the main German thrust, that air support was grounded and wouldn't be available for days, that a hasty counterattack without proper buildup risked not just high casualties, but operational failure if the enemy concentrated against the exposed spearhead. All of those concerns were valid. None of them stopped the attack, and none of them prevented the attack from succeeding. Third Army's commander was right that speed mattered, right that the enemy was vulnerable, right that waiting for coordination would waste the opportunity. But he was also right for reasons he didn't fully control. The weather that grounded Allied air support also grounded German air support. The supply shortages that hampered Third Army also hampered the enemy. The chaos that made coordination difficult made German reinforcement impossible. Third Army attacked into conditions that were as much accident as design. If the weather had cleared, the German Luftwaffe would have contested the advance. If enemy reserves had been closer, they would have counterattacked the exposed flanks. If supply lines had collapsed completely, the relief of Bastogne would have created an encircled force twice the size of the original garrison. The attack succeeded not just because it was fast. It succeeded because it was fast, at the exact moment when speed mattered more than preparation. One day earlier, the German penetration wouldn't have been deep enough to expose. 1 week later, enemy forces would have consolidated defensive positions that Third Army couldn't break without the buildup the system would have required. The commander who ignored the order didn't know this. He believed speed always mattered, that momentum always trumped preparation, that the system was always too slow. He was wrong about always. He was right about December 1944. The system learns this slowly, not through formal review, not through doctrine revision, through the quiet realization that the rules exist to prevent disaster 99 times and miss opportunity once. And that once might matter more than the 99. Third Army's commander never faces court-martial, never receives official censure. The system can't punish success, even success achieved through insubordination. But it doesn't reward him either, because rewarding him would tell every subordinate commander that orders are negotiable, that personal judgment supersedes institutional authority, that the chain of command functions only when convenient. The system can't function that way, so it stays silent, accepts the result, counts the cost, files the after-action reports that show 55,000 casualties purchased a faster resolution than the system would have attempted, and moves on. Because the real lesson isn't about one commander's decision. It's about the tension between structure and speed that no doctrine can resolve. Systems exist to coordinate complexity, to prevent chaos, to ensure that individual actions serve collective goals. But systems are slow. They have to be. Coordination takes time. Approval takes time. Planning takes time. And sometimes time is the resource that matters most. Third Army's commander saw this, acted on it, paid for it in casualties the system would have tried to avoid. He was right about what mattered in that moment. He would have been catastrophically wrong in most other moments. The system knows this. He never did.